move towards the next speaker, which I will be encouraging speakers to try to respect the time and the other can contribute in the chat. So it's my honor to invite Dr. Robert Sangori, who is Deputy Director of Urban Development at the Ministry of Housing and Urban Development in Kenya, to present maybe the context of Kenya, especially the devolution, which had been quite dynamic in in Kenya. I don't know if Dr. Sangori, can you hear me?
Thank you, Remy, and all protocol observed. Let me have my camera on.
Go ahead, we can hear you, we can see you. Okay,
thank you. Allow me just to say from the onset that the presentation I want to make was to be done by National Director for Urban Development, Dr. Charles Kojango, but due to some pressing matters, I would do this on his behalf. And as been mentioned, Dr. Robert Sangori from the State Department for Housing and Urban Development, the Republic of Kenya. And of course, the co-host of the Africities, and we welcome all guests on board to Kenya, together with the Kisumu City, who already have invited the guests to visit the Lakeside City. I would rush through the presentation. I don't know if I can share the screen or I just speak off the screen. Remy?
If you can share, or we can share on your behalf. I don't know. Grace?
Okay, let me.
Shall we share if you have some challenges? I will ask my colleagues to, I think you shared the presentation before, so I will ask them to also attempt to share, if that works.
Do you have the presentation? Or I share it?
If you're happy, you share it, or you speak to the points, the key messages.
Okay. Let me speak to the points of the key messages that that I want to bring out. Yeah, so the issues that I want to raise in this discussion relates to the historical, perspective of the rural-urban linkages in Kenya, and of course the impact of devolution, the challenges experienced, and the national and international strategies on rural-urban development linkages in that kind of context. Just to start with, as we may all be aware that Kenya is at a point of implementing a robust, constitution, which was ushered in 2010, and this brought the aspect of devolution. And with the aspect of devolution, now the key functions that then the citizenry are looking towards are being addressed by the two level of government, that is the national government and the 47 county government. But besides this, we also have the lower tier within the devolved systems, where we are having the cities, the municipalities, and the secondary towns in this arrangement, where now then forms the point of discussion here in terms of the intermediary cities and their role in economic development across the country. I therefore would like to mention that within the historical, perspectives of the rural-urban linkages, there are four main, discussion areas which, if time was there, would have been dealt with in details. But I'll just highlight a few points around each of these, starting with the sessional paper number 10 of 1965, and then the rural-urban development strategy of 1971. We also have a key point to address in terms of what we have as the district focus for rural development strategy of 1994, and then there's the Rural Trade and Production Center strategy of 1996. And within these frameworks, for instance, there's Sessional Paper number 10 of 1965, which was dubbed the African Socialism and its Applications, which then ensured that the country's wealth would remain in the productive areas, including the former White Highlands and those covered by early registration under this, what then we had as the Swanton Plan. It also asserts that to make the economy grow as fast as possible, then the development funds would be invested where it would yield the largest increase in net output. But then this approach, of course, as seen, clearly favored the development of areas endowed with natural resources, good land and rainfall, transport, and power facilities, while areas without such facilities continue to lag behind. And again, in terms of what then we have as the Rural Urban Development Strategy of 1971, Kenya's rural development strategy, evolved over time by embracing two major, components of in 1980s. What then we have as the district focus strategy in the period of 1984-1988. This made the district, then as the the operational centers for rural development, and then of course the rural urban balance strategy of 1986, which then provided the framework with which the rural development strategy was found to then integrate, to embrace the integrated approach to planning and emphasizing, the effective implementation of both the district focus and rural urban balance strategies. By this, there were key points which were focused on, including, increasing location of light agro-based industries in the rural areas and small town, which then provided immediate market for agricultural produce and raw materials to industries. The second point here is that this frameworks, increase promotion of industrial investment in rural areas, but at the same time, of course, increasing the spatial pattern of urbanization in close linkages to agricultural resource base as a shift from the urban primary structure, which were pursued in the past. With this, I bring out the issues which were raised in the third category of this historical perspective of policy frameworks, what we have as the Rural Trade and Production Centers strategy for 1986. And with this, it envisaged the economic management, in a renewed manner, to the point that the economic strategy to the year 2000 aimed at promoting the development of the urban system that supports growth of agriculture and development of rural areas at the same time. But again, at the same time, generating productive, employment opportunities in non-farm activities for rural workers closer to where they lived. Of course, the strategy introduced the rural trade and production centers, which then, within this period, the government at the time, pursued several regional development policies, which included the rural-urban balance, rural growth with the distribution linkages of physical and sectoral sectors, and efficient, manpower policies. In the context of the district focus for rural development, which was another strategy adopted in 1994, especially in 1983, the district focus for rural development strategy, with the district as the basic unit for planning at the local level, which provided for under the theme of mobilizing domestic resources for equitable development. It formalized the organizational strategy for planning and implementation of rural development by shifting the planning and implementation responsibility from headquarter ministries to the district level as the focal units of development. At the same time, the district focus strategy, was based on the principle of complementary, relationship between ministries responsible for sectoral approaches to development and districts where various sectors are joined, in common support of rural development activities. So with those, therefore, there are several other, intermediary policies in between, but those 4 areas were key in terms of looking at the perspective, the linkages of the rural development as we shift to the urban development. And therefore, this brings us to the aspect of the devolution, which, of course, we started with at the introduction with the promulgation of the new constitution in 2010. And the issue of the intermediate cities, the rural development, rural economics, rural service, provision, and migration from rural to major urban areas becomes into focus. And one of the issues that I bring at this point is the issue of the impact of the devolution on the, the growth of the intermediate cities. And as the constitutional provision provides, in Article 184, of course, provides, for the manner in which the urban institutions will then be managed in Kenya. And just to highlight that the 4 intermediary cities of Kenya, notably Mombasa, Kisumu, Nakuru, and Eldoret, have in the past, witnessed successful growth since devolution, and this, has allowed them to aid neighboring areas, within the country, and this again at the same time, has led to the enhancement of citizens' access to basic services, leading to significant success in the fields of, agriculture, health, and transport, among other devolved units. And in the principle of, leave no one behind, which of course past speakers have alluded to within the principles of the new urban agenda, you find that we cannot delink, the growth of our cities, the intermediary, cities, from, how the rural areas are also managed, because the success of the intermediary cities depends on the stability in the rural areas. And of course, this is what the counterpart Hassan in his presentation brought the issue of, the future is in the rural areas. But that is debatable because as we look at the development, there's a point that is then driven that as we look at our Kenyan context, you find that most of the rural areas, which some are disadvantaged in terms of the economic prosperity, and with emerging issues like climate change, we have what then we have currently as, the climate refugee. Now, where does the climate refugee find refuge? At the same time, they find refuge in the intermediary towns. They tend to move away from, the rural areas, thinking that, they are disadvantaged and lack the means to, sustain their economic prosperity with the hope to getting rescue within the cities. But at the same time, if our cities, if not then well managed, then these people's adversaries continues. So this is a debate that then continues in this front. The other aspect that we are bringing out is the impact of devolution, again, directly on the rural development. And just to quickly mention that enhancement of citizen oversight over rural leadership is a key issue. And you realize that in Kenyan context, with the devolution, where we are having 47, county governments, in other words, 47 governors who are, in charge of their jurisdictions, including, the oversight done by the senators who are also, 47 in terms of elected. Of course, we are also having nominated senators, but then besides that, at the lower level, we still have the county assemblies, of course, besides the national assemblies at the national government, and all this, face intense public scrutiny at the same time, and they are under pressure to deliver in terms of what the citizens need, and of course, accountability in terms of the governance structures that are to accompany this. Addressing, the issues of recurring social problems, in areas which were previously neglected, therefore is a key role that devolution in Kenya is trying to play. And there seems to be, concurrence that devolution is providing that level playing field for growth of even both rural areas vis-a-vis what then we have as rural towns. It is kind of arrangement. The issue of the impact in terms of the economies of rural areas is something that then is critical at this stage, again, in Kenya's perspective. And, you know, in terms of increasing economic development and performance in the rural areas, this, you know, is exhibited by, in terms of the technological, if we integrate technology, including satellite imagery data, and of course, nighttime luminosity, such technologies helps represent economic performance over the rural areas in Kenya. But then there's also the issue of the increased markets provision, including, of course, smallholder farmers, agro-pastoralists, and rural entrepreneurs, which all benefit from the aspect of devolution due to the resources which have been devolved further from the national government, which then provide balance to areas that then would have been left behind in this kind of situation. The other aspect that we bring out in terms of, you know, improved access to assets, technologies, and services for vulnerable, you know, the vulnerable groups, members of the society, like women and youths. This has tried to be balanced with the you know, onset of devolution in Kenya. In terms of migration, the rural, you know, urban migration, it is noted that you know, significant, you know, significant transportation improvements, more so with regard to road network, railway, rail network, you know, have improved over time, and this then has accelerated the movement, enhanced the movement of people who then now find it easier to move to the secondary cities. And then, in addition to the issue of the COVID-19 pandemic, which of course has had its fair you know, of contributions towards either movement from or to our secondary cities. This is an issue that is still with us, and how it is managed is an issue, an issue that is being monitored closely, not only in Kenya but in the region and the African continent. The issue of the role of the intermediary cities in enhancing balanced development.
Wrap up, Dr. Sangori.
That's correct. I'm wrapping up. Just as has been mentioned, the point that I mentioned earlier is that the intermediary cities plays a critical role. But as we move to Africities, one of the issues that we then try to look at is the issue of how this balance is taken up and how the governance structures is enhanced at the citywide level, which then prepares our intermediary cities to take up the issues that, emerging issues that they are able to contend with. Otherwise, at this point, I'm looking forward to having discussions around these issues as we move to Africities. And just the last point is the issue of climate change. Where the advanced climate change effects has had, the pain to the vulnerable rural communities, leading to the climate refugees, a point which I addressed earlier, who in turn seek solace in the intermediary cities and other urban areas with the hope of meeting the needs of the basic need, much needed basic need. The situation calls for enhancement of adaptive capacity of the vulnerable urban areas and, urban poor populace in the intermediary cities. And this is a debate that we then take forward. Otherwise, thank you.